Hey everyone, welcome back to the studio here at Vortic Watch Company. I'm RT Custer, and today we have one of every military edition we've made since 2019 on the table in front of me. I can't wait to show you. Make sure you stick around to the end so I can show you this year's military edition. We call it the 6th edition, November 11th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. Every year on Veterans Day, we come out with 50 pieces, or as many as we can, as close to 50 as we can get, of what we call the military edition. But it all started with this pocket watch. This is called the Master Navigation Watch. It says GCT on the dial because it was made on a U.S. Army Air Corps contract and commissioned by the United States government during World War II for the United States Army Air Corps, what we now call the Air Force. GCT means Greenwich Civil Time, which was the Central European time zone during World War II. Several American companies made this pocket watch for the United States government, one of which was Hamilton. I'm holding a Hamilton. Hamilton Watch Company was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They made some of the most accurate timepieces in the world back when we were the Switzerland of the world. We meaning America. Hamilton Watch Company in Pennsylvania made this pocket watch for the U.S. Army Air Corps. Hamilton made 120,000 of this pocket watch. Again, it was called the Master or Navigation Watch. Elgin Watch Company made 20,000. I'll show you one of those in a little bit. And Waltham Watch Company, pronounced Waltham if you're from Massachusetts, made 4,000. Only 4,000. So those are extremely rare, but we do have one or two in the shop. There were other companies that made these pocket watches under that U.S. government contract. A couple of Swiss companies like Longines made them. We here at Vortic focus on turning antique American pocket watches into wristwatches. So we're just showing you the Hamilton, Elgin, and Waltham versions today. Mostly Hamilton pocket watches are what's in all of these military edition watches. This pocket watch was mounted in a contraption like this, a little container, and mounted on the desk of the navigator in a B-17 or a similar aircraft. They put the pocket watch in here, and they thought that these little springs would prevent the pocket watch from being altered or the timekeeping being harmed by turbulence, magnetism, things like that. And this container was actually made in Michigan for the United States Army Air Corps. And it was called the Master Navigation Watch because it was used by the navigators on B-17s and similar aircraft to calculate longitude and figure out where they were in the sky. So this pocket watch, plus its officer or the person using it in the sky, was GPS during World War II, and it's how we made sure we were bombing the right Nazi city. And that's the history of the pocket watch. It's a beautiful thing. You know, we've been making American pocket watches into wristwatches since 2014 when we launched on Kickstarter. Our 10-year anniversary is November 17 of 2024. Somebody brought us one of these, I think in 2018, maybe 2019. And I didn't know the history. I dove into the research. I love American history. I love American military history specifically. And I just fell in love with the history of this watch. And when I realized that Hamilton made 120,000 of them, I was like, well, we can probably find at least some that all look the same. We were able to gather 50, and we used those 50 in 2019 to save ourselves from the lawsuit that we actually had with the modern day Hamilton Watch Company. If you're curious in that lawsuit, it's Hamilton v. Vortic. You can Google that. Long story short, we were able to win that lawsuit, but not without spending a lot of money on legal fees. And we had a huge legal debt at that point. The military edition was part of what saved us. And this is what we called the first edition. We charged what we thought was a lot of money for a watch back then. Again, we were a young company at that point. I needed to raise about $100,000 for our legal bills to protect us from the Swatch group. So we found 50 of these Hamilton pocket watches. I thought it was a little bit ironic that we were using a Hamilton pocket watch to defend ourselves and pay our legal bills against the modern day Hamilton Watch Company. But whether it's irony, karma, etc., like I said, this watch saved us. We put this watch online November 11th, Veterans Day of 2019. We said we have 50 of them. We used a titanium case with a diamond-like carbon or a DLC black coating. And that titanium case was, one of the lighter watches we've made. The black really made the watch look stunning, military, original, looks like just a gorgeous military watch. And again, this is one of our first editions. We sold all 50 of those watches in about 24, maybe 48 hours max. And the whole company turned around. We were able to pay off our legal bills. We created this amazing following of customers and fans who not only loved and respected what we're doing, preserving American history here, but maybe they heard about the lawsuit and they heard that this little American company was trying to preserve these pocket watches and turn them into wristwatches, and they wanted to help us. And or we just found 50 people that thought this watch was really cool. Thank you to our original 50 customers. Thank you to some of the customers, like the one that sent us this one. A lot of these watches I recalled and asked if I could bring in for this video, and our customers graciously obliged and sent us a few of these watches. We have kept a couple of them over the years, but this video is about one of every watch we've ever made in our military edition since 2019, starting with this, the first edition. So that was the first edition. And yeah, this is a little bit of nostalgia looking at this. We also did a DLC coating on the case back of this one. You won't see that very often in our products since. I think it's pretty cool. The only downside was it's hard to read the engraving on the back ring, which, you know, pros and cons of, because it's also beautiful. So one of the other things we did before I get into the second edition from 2020 was that every single watch sold here and in the future, every single military edition that Vortic Watch Company makes, we donate $500 from the sale of that watch to a school in Delaware called the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative. And they teach United States military vets how to become watchmakers. It's one of the only watchmaking schools in the country, one of the few watchmaking schools in the world. And they're using the Bulova, or the Joseph Bulova program from the Bulova Watch Company, to train specifically U.S. military vets how to be watchmakers. Obviously, the perfect charity or nonprofit to work with something like this. But as soon as I heard about him, I had to go out there. I met Sam Cannon, who runs the place. If you want to learn more, it's veteranswatchmakerinitiative.org. But you can also go to vorticwatches.com/military, see all of these, and see links to, you know, our charity that we support through these watches. Let's talk about the second edition, 2020. In 2020, we wanted to make another black watch, another DLC watch, but we wanted to make it different. At that point, we decided we were going to do this more often. We were going to do this once every year. So every year on Veterans Day, 11/11 at 12 noon Mountain Time, we would release as many of these as we can, ideally 50 pieces a year. We found another 50 pocket watches. As you can tell, the dial hands and the movement are all the same. This one is also a titanium case with a DLC coating. But this one, if you look close, we added that little red ring, which is what we call the case tube underneath the crown. And that red ring really separates this one from the rest. We also, at this point, we were doing a handful of straps, 3 straps per watch. And we had red stitching on the strap of the second strap. It was black with red stitching that came with this watch. And that worked really well. All of these watches, we try every year to include a awesome Greg Stevens strap. If you're not familiar with Greg Stevens' design, you can check him out. But he's worked with us since 2019 to make these amazing straps out of canvas. We try to do a canvas-based strap, military style every year, and then at least one other strap that you can mix it up and change it up. This year, this was 2020, and this was one of our most popular watches, again, sold out almost right away. Now, in 2020, we also introduced a new idea, and that was a special edition. So we made 15 of these. This was our first special or very limited edition. We made 15 of these. It was the same pocket watch. So dial, hands, and movement are the same, except we used a bronze case, all bronze. And this one you can tell, I mean, it's 4 years old. It's seen some wear. The customer that sent me this said he wears it almost every day, all the time. And you can tell the bronze is just spectacular. This was one of the first ones where we did a steel case back where you can read the engraving really easily. You can see right there, 2020 special 05 out of 15. So this is the 5th serial number out of the 15. Then if you look really close at the movement, this was the first time we highlighted this and focused on this. There's a U.S. government stamp right here on the movement. And we found out this year in 2020 that only a small portion of these movements had this U.S. government marking. We were told that it was basically the first 10% that were made. And again, if they made 120,000, that means 12,000 roughly had this U.S. government stamp. And so we found 15 that all had that. So they were special, more rare, earlier movement. They were made earlier than these other ones. if I didn't mention, most of these movements were made between about 1938 and the mid-1940s, obviously during World War II. These were a little bit earlier, these US government marked movements. And so this one we called the special edition. We also found a different canvas to work with to really make this watch pop. Again, thank you to Greg Stevens for these amazing straps. And you can see how well these straps hold up. I mean, this watch has been used almost daily for, 4 years, and the strap is still in fantastic condition. So that is the 2020 special edition. Now, moving on to 2021, we call this the third edition. And this watch was made especially famous by this one right here. Internally, we call it Jim, but that watch is the watch that John Krasinski wore on the show Jack Ryan. This watch, though, we made 50. Again, this was 2021. We made 50 of these using a stainless steel case, same dial, hands, and movement. If you look really close on the back, we changed the engraving a little bit, but we used a stainless steel case back so that it's nice and easy to read. I think this was the year we got our new laser engraver, so really stepped up the quality of that laser etching on the back of the watch. And then this strap was really fun. It was like a bomber jacket leather, so it's really soft, just a beautiful mix of leather on this watch. And this watch also came with a black strap with white stitching, as you can see on my buddy Jim over here. And this one right here was actually one of the watches that John Krasinski wore in the show Jack Ryan. We have a lot of other videos about that process. It all came from a prop master. My friend Mark McPheon connected us to a prop master in that industry, and we were able to get originally my personal first edition watch on the wrist of Michael Kelly in season 3 of Jack Ryan. And then John Krasinski saw that watch, thought it was really cool, and asked for one for himself. It was while we were making the 2021 third edition, and we made 2 extras. So we made 52 that year, technically. One of them is right here. One of them went to the domestic sets, like John Krasinski had it in the US, and the other one traveled around the world with him to the other sets. Those are the 2 prop watches used in season 4 of Jack Ryan on John Krasinski's wrist. One of those is being auctioned off with Christie's December 9th in New York City for 2 different charities. Some of the money is supporting the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative, as we always do. The other supports the Lavalette Foundation, which you can read more about on our website. And then the other watch we're doing a sweepstakes for, and you can check that out also on our website. Basically entered to win one of the watches that John Krasinski wore. So that's the third edition and why that particular one is so special. We talked first edition, second edition, third edition. That was 2019, 2020, 2021. Now in 2022, we came out with our fourth edition. And, same dial, hands, and movement. This is a Hamilton 4992B, one of those original pocket watches we were talking about, the master navigation watches. This year, we had a lot of fun, and we did a chemical patina on the steel. So if you look really close, every one of these 50 watches that we did that year had a slightly different aesthetic. The case was chemically patinaed, and so they all looked and were one of a kind, the case itself. It was stainless steel. We used, again, a Greg Stevens strap. We put slightly different keepers on it this time. You can see the case back. We added a layer of engraving. So there's 2 lines of engraving around the back, which looks just spectacular, really leveraging the technology that we have in our new laser engraver. And this one turned out just wonderfully. Again, this one sold out fairly quickly. This is when we were starting to talk about having a watch in Jack Ryan. I think people were starting to Google, like, what watch is that on John Krasinski's wrist? I think it was starting to catch on. But that was the 4th edition from 2022 with the chemical patinaed steel case. Next, we did that year another special edition. And this one was very special. I'm going to show you the movement first. So this was a gold flashed movement originally made by Elgin. So you can see B.W. Raymond on this movement. And what these watch companies did was they used their most famous and most accurate railroad pocket watches and altered them for the U.S. Army Air Corps contract. B.W. Raymond was Elgin's, one of Elgin's best pocket watch movements that was mostly used by the railroads back then for railroad grade watches. And they gold flashed it or gold plated every piece of the movement. And then for some reason, we don't really know, but this one had a white dial instead of a black dial. And you can see that right here at the top, there's a 0 at the top instead of a 24 on the black dials that Hamilton made. You'll also notice that GCT is down here, kind of closer to what would be 6 o'clock on a standard watch. Again, all of these watches are a true 24-hour dial. We're about 11:30 right now as we're filming this. So you can see the hands are down here closer to what we would traditionally call 6 o'clock. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's a spectacular thing. Back to this watch. So this year we made 15 of these. These sold out, I think the fastest ever. I want to say it was 7 minutes. It was the most we charged for anything at that point. And they went very quickly. I think one, because they were so different, you know, the gold movement and the white dial. We also redid the hands on these, and one of our watchmakers painted the hands, the second hand, red. And so you can see that coming around. That was our first red second hand. And if you look really close at this one, and I don't know how many had this, but it's actually etched, not engraved. This was done after the fact. But right down here at the bottom, it's etched U.S. Army A.C. or U.S. Army Air Corps. And you don't see that very often at all. That was definitely one of 15 here. That is the 2022 special edition. At that point, we started getting a little nervous, you know, like how many of these were actually made, right? We did that research. We understand there's 120,000 of these made. That was 80 years ago. They were used in the war. How many of them actually survived? So I started having to find new sources for these. Everybody always asks, where do you get the pocket watches? A lot of these pocket watches come from estate auctions. And what I'll say is that somewhere in the country, a pawn shop or a jewelry store or a watchmaker either goes out of business or passes away. And there's an estate sale. And there are people called estate buyers. If you've ever seen American Pickers on the History Channel, it's people like that. And they are picking and they are searching for valuable things in these estate sales. There are also estate auction companies that buy from these estate sales, and they gather 50 to 100 estate sales from across the country, across months. And they put all of that stuff into one place. And that is an estate auction. And that's where we pick up a lot of these things. We can buy 2, 3, 5, 10 of these at the same time from the same place, all from that auction, mostly because many people, unfortunately, don't have a use for pocket watches nowadays, and they don't realize that these are amazing pieces of American history, specifically military history, that can be preserved. As we get into 2023, we started to have a lot of fun. 2023, we started looking through the archives and planning for 2023 and 2024. And we found something that answered a question that I've gotten a lot, which is all of these are made for the United States Army Air Corps. Did they make anything for the Navy? They sure did. This is called the comparing watch. And this pocket watch, again, made by Hamilton. This was the 2974B. It was only 17 joules as compared to the 21 or 22 on most of these other ones. But the comparing watch is very special. This was a similar pocket watch mechanism, very similar to the build quality of these Hamilton 4992Bs. This one was made for the Navy, and you couldn't buy this watch. You couldn't buy just the pocket watch, period. It came with the ship's chronometer. And the ship's chronometer is the clock that sits below deck of a Navy ship. And back then in World War II, you had to have a clock or a pocket watch to tell time. And this clock underneath the ship was like a little gimbal system. It told the most accurate time. It was also made by Hamilton. And this pocket watch came with it, and it was called the comparing watch. And the officer of the watch would compare this pocket watch to the ship's chronometer below deck, basically synchronize the time between them, and then carry this pocket watch around the ship and make sure that all the other timekeeping devices on board were synchronized and on time with the ship's chronometer below deck. And that's why they call it, and we call it, the comparing watch. And in 2023, we did our first edition of this product. We made 10, just 10, and we did this beautiful blue strap to go with it. Thank you again to our customer who let me have this one for a week as we filmed this video. Just a spectacular product, turned out amazing, beautifully clean and elegant white ceramic dial. They called it Grand Few enamel back then. And that was the comparing watch. And to my knowledge, this was the only similar pocket watch like this of this size that we can turn into a wristwatch that was specifically made for the United States Navy. So if you ask, did we make a Navy watch? Yes, we sure did. It's called the comparing watch. That was our first edition. And then we did that, it came out on D-Day of 2023. Now for our military edition in 2023, we were starting to run out. We were really focused on the Kickstarter that we were having for Colorado Watch Company. And so we decided instead of making 50, let's make only 30. And we made 2 watches, a military edition, which at this point was the 5th edition, and a special edition. And we only made 30 total that year, meaning we only made 20 of this watch. This is our 5th edition. This is a stainless steel case now with a DLC coating. You can see it's a little more matte black. And then this year, Tyler did this really cool thing with the case. We actually etched these little steps into the lugs, which just added another layer, another dimension. And you can see, if you kind of rewind this video and you look at the different crowns, like the engineering behind the military edition gets slightly better, slightly improved every single year. And, just slightly different. We get a little more water resistant as we go. We refine things as we go. And this one is just spectacular between these lines on the lugs and then the knurling on the crown. And then finally with this one, it's the same dial, hands, and movement that we used from the pocket watch. But this one, again, we did a red second hand. We did a red second hand on everything in 2023. We made 20 of these. These, obviously, since we didn't make very many, sold out. Some of the fastest watches we had to sell out, except for the special edition we made last year, which was exceptionally special. So this one is the special edition from 2023, and this has a mochame bezel and crown, and then a bronze case. And we only made 10. This one sold out in, minutes, like a few minutes. Really didn't expect that. This one was just spectacular. But again, we're testing new price points. As these things get rarer, the price goes up. And we did not expect to sell out of this one as quickly, especially with the amount of just effort we had to put into making the bezel and the crown. This is the mochame bezel and crown. And mochame, if you haven't seen it or heard of it before, you might be familiar with Damascus steel. It's basically layers of metal that are hammered together in a forge, one layer at a time. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe mochame is copper, brass, and nickel silver all hammered together. And you can see these layers. It almost looks like wood grain. Again, it's just the bezel and the crown that we made from this material called mochame. And then we used a bronze case, which you can see is starting to patina on this particular watch. And just came out spectacular. Again, we only made 10 of those that year. So now we're up to what we'll call present day, almost, 2024. When we hit 2024 this year, this was the year that we were really going all in on the military edition for a number of reasons. One is the full press came out that this watch was on John Krasinski's wrist in Jack Ryan. People thought it was the coolest thing ever. That search term of what watch is John Krasinski wearing in Jack Ryan season 4 just blew up. We decided to do a sweepstakes for one of those watches. And so we wanted to hype up the military edition this year. Because of that, I went into archives, all of the pocket watches that we've collected, and I tried to find really interesting limited editions or small batches of things that we could use to tell some other stories. I also met a gentleman named John, who is just a world-renowned pocket watch collector, specifically in the Hamilton military pocket watch space. And he was able to educate me on some of the background and go deeper on some of the history of these watches, and also source a few things that I've never seen before. So the first thing from 2024 is what we released on VE Day, or Victory in Europe Day, which is the post-war conversion. And this watch is the same pocket watch as that's in most of the other ones that we talked about. It's the Hamilton 4992B. And if you look at the movement, you can tell, yep, that's the Hamilton 4992B in there. We've been talking about that. It was made for the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. But after the war, you could take it maybe to Hamilton itself, maybe to a jewelry store, maybe to a watchmaker. Someone must have advertised a service to put what they called a civilian dial on this watch. So most of these dials were a black dial, true 24-hour, said GCT up here where this one says Hamilton. But this one was converted after the war, probably in the late 1940s, maybe early 1950s, from a military 24-hour dial to a more standard, what they again called a civilian dial, a 12-hour dial. It still has all the features and functions. It still tells time just the same, similar way. Obviously now it's only 12 hours that it's displaying instead of 24. Now it says Hamilton on the dial, but we found 15 that all had the exact same dial. And that's why we're speculating that someone must have offered the service. Someone made this dial at some point, again, late 1940s, early 1950s, and offered this service to convert it. And it was not as simple as just changing the dial. You had to alter the way that this movement functions slightly, again, to change it from 24 hours to 12 hours. And these turned out just spectacular. We decided to use an all bronze case on this one, and a slightly different, this one is not a Greg Stevens strap. This is made by Hadley Roma. This is what we call oxblood, and this is a Horween shell cordovan strap. And this was a post-war conversion, is what we called it. And we made 15. It all looked the same. Up until this time in the video, everything I've showed you is sold and you can't buy it. And I'm sorry. This one, though, by the time this video comes out, we will most likely have 3, maybe 4 of these left. And again, this is called the post-war conversion. All of these, all the information about all of this can be found at vorticwatches.com/military at any time. But this is what we called that post-war conversion. Came out Victory in Europe Day in May of 2024. What we internally call the Navy watch, or the comparing watch, was so popular in 2023 that we decided to do it again. This year we used a slightly different case. This is still stainless steel. You can see the machine marks really well on this one. We had a lot of fun making these cases. This is, again, that Hamilton 2974, what we and they called the comparing watch, used by the United States Navy back then. And we made 10 more of these in 2024 on D-Day in June. And at this point, we have maybe 2 or 3 left. So if you're interested in this one, you can check that out. Again, vorticwatches.com/military. That is what we call the comparing watch. I know we're not going to make another one of these next year. I'd love to keep making small batches of, let's say, 5 to 10 of these when we find them, when we see them, over the next 10, 20 years. Right now, we've made only 20 total, 10 a year ago and 10 this year, and we have a handful left from the 2024 comparing watch, and that's one right there. And that year, this year, we used a black strap just to make it a little bit different. And that's, again, one of those Horween shell cordovan straps. This one, honestly, by the time the video comes out, this one's gone. This is the last one we have. If it's still available, you might want to hop on this. This is called the Royal Pheon. I wanted to call it the Broad Arrow. Check out that video on our website if you want to see the whole history behind that. This is the Broad Arrow on the dial. I'm going to change the time on this one so you can see that arrow. That is called the Broad Arrow, or the Royal Pheon. We called this watch the Royal Pheon, but that arrow on the dial was the king's symbol. And this one is the rarest military edition we've ever made. So like I said, Hamilton made 120,000 of the 4992B. Only 2,000 of these watches were made by Hamilton for the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy. This way the Hamilton logo is printed on this is the only time we've ever seen it like that, especially in these old military pocket watches from World War II. We found 10 of these through one of my connections in the estate world that are in absolutely perfect condition. You can see a little bit of patina on the hands, but the dial and the movement on these are just expertly preserved. This one, real close down here, it says U.S. Navy BU ships, or the business unit of ships. And then really small down here in the corner, you can see the broad arrow on the movement itself. And before I forget, let me grab this little case up here. The Royal Pheon, again, this is the last one we have left. We made 10 of these. This case also comes with it. That's the original pocket watch case, and right there you can see the broad arrow on that. So I called it triple signed. There's 3 arrows, the dial, the movement, and the case itself. And we have the original cases that all came with these 10 that we made. 9 of them are sold. We have 1 left at the time of filming this video. And we got a Greg Stevens strap for this one because, gosh, to say this is worth it was an understatement. We called this British saddle leather. It's just spectacular, works perfectly with this. And this is a stainless steel case that Kent, one of our watchmakers, just painstakingly polished all the different parts of this case. Did a green finish on the lugs, a polished bezel, polished sides of the watch. These are, again, the most rare we've ever used. They only made 2,000 of these. We found 10. It's the only 10 that my collector friend has ever seen. He let me buy all of them. So to say we can't make any of these again, this one would be closest to full fact. That is a probability in, the 6 years that we've been doing this. I've only seen 10. I bought all of them. We turned them all into wristwatches. This is the Royal Pheon. So that brings us to present day, the 6th edition. This year for 2024, November 11th, Veterans Day, 12 noon Mountain Time. The new one is coming soon. But before I show you the new one and we talk about the 6th edition coming November 11th, 2024, let me talk about the GCT watch, which is what I'm wearing and is right here. So the inspiration for the GCT was all of these watches here, is the military edition precisely. We have a lot of customers that love these watches, but they're all 49 millimeters in size, right? This is a big watch. We don't make very many. They sell out very quickly and they're thousands of dollars. So the military edition by Vortic Watch Company is not for everyone, and that's okay. But we think, and a lot of people think, it's really cool. And so when we decided to launch Colorado Watch Company and try to make the most American-made watch at scale, we decided to make a replica or an homage of our own product. And what I'm wearing in this watch here is the Colorado Watch Company GCT watch, 42 millimeters in diameter, 12 o'clock crown, just like these, scaled down, similar design. It's a 12-hour dial, and it's a modern American assembled movement, a American-made, Colorado-made dial and case and crown, everything on the outside. All the large metal parts are made right here in this building. Again, we call it the Colorado Watch Company GCT. You can learn more about that watch at coloradowatchcompany.com. We're going to start accepting pre-orders again after our Kickstarter here very soon. Again, Colorado Watch Company, we call that the GCT. And that one's going to be $1,900. A lot more accessible. I like to use accessible or attainable price point than our military edition. So if you like the style of these and you want to support the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative and you want to have a watch that looks like these, but maybe is a little smaller, is automatic, is modern, that's what the GCT is all about. And from the sale of each one of these watches, we'll donate $100 to the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative. As a quick reminder, the world needs more watchmakers, just like the world needs more plumbers, electricians. The skilled trade gap is real. So why don't we teach U.S. military vets how to become watchmakers? And that's why we partner with the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative. It's veteranswatchmakerinitiative.org. Check them out. We support them through these watches, the military edition, these watches, the Colorado Watch Company GCT, and t-shirts like this. This is our military edition t-shirt. If you like this color, give us a month or so. We're working on something pretty cool. We didn't talk about all the cool stuff that these watches come with. Let me put together a little package for you for the 6th edition. I'm going to take John Krasinski's watch off and set it right here. This is the case for the Royal Pheon, but let's pretend it's the case for this pocket watch here in my 6th edition. When you buy the military edition, which again, November 11th, 12 noon Mountain Time, you can have a chance at one of 50 of these. You don't just get the watch itself, including one strap. This year, you get 2 straps. So we have our Swiss military canvas. That's new this year. Thank you, Greg Stevens. This strap is amazing. This like olive green leather backing. Check that out. Built in the United States for Vortic Watch Co. Just an amazing piece of art in the strap itself. We have another strap here, just a black leather that's going to look fantastic on this watch with a vintage white stitching. So you get the watch itself, 2 straps, and everything you see here. So if you look here, you can put your extra strap in here. You get this stand that we also make here in Fort Collins, Colorado, machined out of a block of aluminum. You get the original case from the pocket watch. You get this stand, which I'll show you how to do right here. You put just one of these in, and you can mount that watch right here on your nightstand, wherever you'd like to put it. It's all mounted here on this basically retail display stand that is now for your nightstand. It's got a mirror on it so you can show your friends without taking your watch off. You get all of this shipped to you in an ammo can. It's an experience, to say the least, and we like to build that experience with the military edition. But enough about all the extra stuff. Let's talk about this watch. So this is the 6th edition, and this one's extremely special for a number of reasons. One is it's the first time we've used a titanium case since the 1st and 2nd edition years ago. So this entire case including the bezel, is made from titanium here in Fort Collins, Colorado. We barrel tumbled it. It almost looks like stone washed. If you're a knife guy and you like that stone wash finish on knives, this is a similar finish. That means that each case will be slightly different. It'll be that stone washed or barrel tumbled appearance on the titanium. And like I said, we have this Swiss canvas military strap and a black strap that it comes with. And then the first 20, we're making 50 this year again. We found 50. The first 20 will be marked with that US government marking, meaning they're the early movements from the first 10% or so of the watches. This is serial number 1 that I'm holding right here. So the first 20 will have that US government marking, and the dial is loomed. So if you look very closely at this dial, you can see that the 24 numbers in the center, and then the indices all around the side, and including the hands, all have loom that's hand applied, one meticulous drop at a time. And that's all done by Kent, one of our watchmakers here in the building. It's a meticulous process. It takes forever. And so those first 20 will sell for $9,500. And then serial numbers 21 through 50 will sell for $8,500. Again, those are the two options. And those other 30 will not have the luminous paint. So if you're a purist and you want it all original dial, original hands, original movement, and you don't mind that it doesn't have the US government marking, it's not one of the first or early movements, and you just want a military edition with a beautiful titanium case and one of these straps, you can buy one of serial numbers 21 through 50. That's one of those last 30 that we're making. But if you want the luminous dial, the US government marking, and serial number 1 through 20, that is what this is that I'm holding. And again, that is the 6th edition. I'll say it one last time. The military edition by Vortic Watch Company. It's only available on Veterans Day, November 11th, 2024. November 11th, every year, 12 noon Mountain Time. Check it out. All of this and this watch on that day and that time will be available at vorticwatches.com/military.